to prayer and then jump right on in. I'll open. Infinite Creator, we know that what is being disclosed right now is nothing scary if we look at the human race as one self. And we know that for psychological, spiritual healing and wholeness, it's to incorporate those parts of us that have been hidden. That's true on the micro and the macro. So whatever conversation unfolds here today, we ask that it be blessed for the highest and greatest goodness and wholeness for us and those who might listen. Amen. Well, let's start off with disclosure. It does seem to, I've been following not Spielberg's disclosure, I haven't seen that yet, but disclosure in terms of what's on News Nation is, they claim to be by sort of center. I think they're more center right. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying they're probably more center right. But the disclosure people on there are definitely on the right, it seems to me. But they talked a lot about the disclosure happening soon and the frustrations that are seeming to exist for people who've been there for a long time, including military people that don't want to have disclosure. But I was happy to see that those who were talking about wanting full disclosure weren't necessarily demonizing those who don't, in the sense that I've seen before 10 years ago, people who wanted full disclosure would talk about how those who are holding it back are all controlled by the evil Illuminati and reptilians. So at least we're not talking about that anymore. People are more speculating about, does it have to do with safety, national protection, as well as, big, huge industries like the fuel industry, oil and gas. What's going to happen if all of a sudden a lot of stuff is released in terms of our economy? I'm not saying we shouldn't have full disclosure. I'm just saying those are the questions. And one wonders what might be the most wise way to do that to our particular collective, who many of whom, let's say evangelical Christians, I think would go crazy if it was confirmed that there's actual ET in terms of their theology. So those are some of my insights or observations, rather, viewing News Nation. What do you guys think or see? Are y'all ready for an ET world?
AI world. Guess that's.
I think it's been a long, drawn out campaign. Pretty much I always think about Ross speaking of the Confederation meeting with Dwight Eisenhower and how they pretty much came to the agreement to not disclose, but to go their separate ways, and the Confederation just quietly continue their campaigns in the sky. And I think part of the transition of us going into the fourth density is really bringing a lot of this to light. And also the collective's desire to know is also producing these occurrences and really ramping up the disclosure. So I think it's a good thing. It does have it's definitely its negative sides, the impacts that it could have. But I think it's just, one step closer to us moving into the fourth density and realizing that, like Ross said, the universe is a crowded place. We're not the only life. And so, yeah.
I
It
think
does.
as
I
far as
wonder. Go ahead, Troy. Sorry.
yeah, I think I'm sort of post-disclosure in my emotional life right now. Um, in that from 2000 to 2022, it was a hot topic on my mind, and now I kind of don't care. It'll happen as it happens, and uh, it, my worrying about it's not going to influence it one iota. So I'm just going to roll with whatever happens and hope God gives me chances to serve in some way.
I remember when I was a little boy and I had that UFO experience. I was 6 years old. And it was right around the time that the Law of One material was being channeled when it started. And um, I was given to know at that point that I would be part of this disclosure process in the world. Uh, and that's played out in terms of, I think what we're doing right here is exactly that. Even if we don't talk about UFOs, it's seeding the consciousness with a certain kind of love and acceptance. Yeah.
Well, I hope God sends me souls to be a director for that need help transitioning into the post disclosure world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel quite the calling that you do, Doug, toward it, but I'm certainly prepared for that if God should see fit to use me. Mainly, I just want to be used by God in some form or another.
Yeah. For me, the disclosure calling is connected. It's more psycho-spiritual, psychologically, to view disclosure from a holistic perspective, not in terms of seeing things as always a problem, or the powers that be are keeping these things from us, but rather just see it, like I said a minute ago, that if you were to track one human being's lifetime and say if they were going to counseling, then good counseling would help them integrate a bunch of their shadow side, and you don't hate on the shadow side, parts of us that we didn't even know existed. You don't hate on that in order to get into good psychological wherewithal. You learn about it, you accept it, forgive it, all the things that Rod talks about. And I think that's what's happening on a macro scale. Then on the spiritual side, I feel we have a lot of voices now. And in part, I wrote my book for this, is we have a lot of good voices out there that I think can help walk people from the conventional theology into more of the cosmic. I think that infrastructure is there. And it just has really emerged in the past 10 years. Pretty cool.
Mhm. Now, in order to assist my brothers in this group, I do have to tell Danny that uh, thing that he calls a yurt behind his house is really his spaceship.
I put some solar lights around the outside, and at night it looks very much like a it looks very much like a flying saucer. I can see it through the trees, and it's fun. I, I don't keep up a lot with news and such, but I had a curiosity that you guys might could tell me more about. But having come from Southern Baptist background and been out of it for so many years, I have a younger brother who still is, I would say, evangelical and on the charismatic side of things. And now and then when I'm exposed a little bit to some of the things that he's following or somehow I get around people, not necessarily at one of their services or something, but I'm surprised how far things have come since I was in that element in terms of, like, he's more open to astrology and fascinated by the planets and the moon and different things. Do Troy, you may have your finger on the pulse, and maybe Doug too, Barbara. I'm not sure about Michael, DeMarcus, and Rudy, what their lives are like, but are you around enough to see, Doug, you said something about in the last 10 years, are you seeing changes in the way people are thinking more in those, still in those realms, so to speak?
I see people who've started to deconstruct their faith a lot more. That, and alongside of that, with the continual seeding of in the conscious mind or the collective unconscious mind of movies like Disclosure or other, alien movies, have all prepared us. But the theology of the fundamentalist mindset, and that could be anywhere for, it could be Catholic fundamentalism or it could be evangelical fundamentalism. There's still a major problem if you believe that mindset, because it's all hinged around a particular notion of atonement and atonement theology, and connected with the fact from their perspective that Jesus, what does that say about Jesus dying on the cross and atoning all of us so we could go to heaven? Then all of a sudden, if we have aliens in the picture, then what does that mean about sin? What does that mean about Jesus' atonement? So it's very threatening to a lot of people's belief systems when it comes to, in the very heart of their belief system, Jesus' salvific work. So that's what has to be kind of looked at and widened a bit.
I think the creation story too, if that begins to change, for them to they have to take in a broader spectrum of what creation is like. But I am amazed sometimes, like say with my brother, I say things that I expect him to just, say, call me a heretic or really, and there are times he really reacts, but yet there's also this subtle thing about we really all at some level know the truth, how much memory or how much of it we are conscious of. So some of those things I find don't create the reaction I would expect. I'm kind of surprised. It's almost like, well, this couldn't fit with your theology, what I just said, but yet you're not reacting. And so I think there's another level that they're taking it in on that tells me something about truth and how it's known.
It's like you can hold two things that are diametrically opposed to each other and hold them without allowing them to inform each other inside of you. It's kind of like I remember being taught. We had a professor one time, or a teacher in high school, who absolutely believed that the world was formed in 6,000 years. Literalist in terms of Genesis. and all of that.
Mhm.
And yet he had his master's in physics, and he was clearly a smart guy. And he said something that just basically said, yeah, you just kind of hold them separately. And it wasn't a very good answer to me, but that's just how he probably psychologically dealt with it.
Yeah. I was just looking at some of Rudy's chat there
Okay.
that I thought maybe we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't see chats as they come through, but I caught this.
All right. Well, both Rudy and DeMarcus have said something. So Rudy says, post recovery jaw stuff. And I wonder about the idea that disclosure won't move faster than the slowest among us can handle. Yeah. I think that there will be a certain threshold where the slowest among us will just have to catch up. There'll be a certain threshold that overcomes the slowests because everybody has a right to completely refuse. Anybody has that right, but to believe something. But I do believe that when, as DeMarcus alluded to, when a certain threshold of humans want to know, it's just tapping into that law of squares, the law of doubles, where it comes to those, it comes as a collective. It'll come because the collective is calling for it.
Well, and people
And
still have the right to believe that the earth is flat.
mm-hmm.
So denial can spring quite eternal, even in the face of substantial evidence.
Yeah.
I think there's also the phenomenon that a lot of people have questions they're just afraid to ask, and then all of a sudden when it's out there, they more quickly jump on board and go, yeah, I've wondered about that. Or,
Mm-hmm.
they're just not going to they're not going to let it come to the forefront with their own initiation of it.
Mm-hmm. Afraid to ask, who do you talk to? They don't know
Yeah.
who to talk to about it. And then all of a sudden, people are talking about more about it, and it can open up some neat things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. DeMarcus mentions, imagine if they found out Jesus was a fourth density ET himself. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but the whole the Yahweh situation in the Old Testament also, and how pretty much the Israelites were a battleground for between the Confederation and Orion and the wilderness and Moses. It was extraterrestrial forces that he met on Sinai rather than God and just all of that.
Yeah. Well, and then it gets into the question of who is God. And, those are all things that will have to be looked at because, at the beginning of a monotheistic faith journey, and then where fundamentalists just stop, is this sense of an I thou, that God is a thou, there's an I, and there's a relationship. And my own distortion, bias, I guess, would be that there can be an I thou, even if you are that, even if the I and thou are the same, there can still be a relationship. And so, it's going to ask people who are so ingrained into God is up there and we are down here. It's going to really ask a lot of them the questions of what is unitive consciousness, and I think that's where, Troy, your great love for the contemplative life and teaching about units of consciousness is those kinds of things are going to be very valuable because that's the only way people are really going to be able to, I think about ETs, even those who have visited us and have been a part of human evolution. No bad parts. There we go. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the only way that people are going to
as
deal with
as
it.
as we start to talk to our own parts and realize that our personality is not a unity, we can expand our way of thinking about God, that
Hmm.
God can be transcendent, but he can also be a multiplicity in some ways too. And there can be an I, thou, but there can be this complexity that, and we then can become a part of God, sort of like we have parts to our own personality. And, I don't know, I think, in the last 15 years since internal family systems, I honestly think it's paving the way
Hmm.
to allow this kind of thinking a little more.
Yeah. Has anybody not heard of internal family systems? IFS. It's a type of psychodynamic theory and technique. Has anybody not heard of that? Or Troy, do you want to just give? Are you knowledgeable enough to give an overview on it? Or
Um, yeah, I can give you a quickie. It's not that different from Jung. Uh,
Mhm.
it's basically that we have parts, that we're not a unity, that we have parts within ourselves, and that's not that psychologically radical, but they have, through their technique of talking to parts, they have demystified that theoretical construct to make it much more tangible for everyday people. And they have some techniques to how to talk to your parts, and um, it becomes less threatening and so forth. And we multiple personality therapists were telling uh, people this from the 1980s, but they wouldn't have it. The field argued back to us that they didn't want people to have multiple personalities, but this language of parts is much more palatable to the field as a whole, of psychology as a whole, and um, it kind of divides. It makes a good explanation for how the different parts might arise. You have uh, fireman parts, and you have manager parts, and you have, I haven't memorized
Exiles.
all
The exiles.
the exiles, right?
Yeah.
And so the exiles are what we used to call the wounded inner child kind of thing. And uh, but you have all these firemen helpers and different parts of the soul that are all constantly protecting the exiles, and creates psychological symptoms that trouble us. But if you think of them as parts, they become a bit more manageable, particularly with a good therapist. And but once you realize you have parts, why can't God have parts? And can't we be part of God? And to me, it just kind of opens things up a bit.
That's the conventional moving to the cosmic. Disclosure is happening on all kinds of fronts, and the psychological field would be one of them. Absolutely. Yeah.
Are there some, Troy, are there some practitioners of this who believe that there are external entities attached to these parts too?
I don't think so.
Probably, but I don't know. I've not researched it.
Okay, I'm
I
looking.
think I think seems like I'm remembering a discussion with my pastor, who has read more in Richard Schwartz than I have.
Yeah.
And he has run into some things that seem to be like external attachments rather than psychological parts, but he's not made a big deal about it.
Okay, I'm thinking about somebody else, and I'm actually doing a scan, and I cannot find this person, so I'm probably wrong about this.
Yeah, but Troy, didn't you say that we're not a unity? It seems like that we are a unity that have the different parts.
We're a unity we're a multiplicity within a unity.
Yeah.
So we're fractals.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the very purpose of creation. The creator engages itself in the illusion of separation in order to learn more about itself and to experience itself.
Yeah.
I have a real good little picture of the managers, the firefighters, and the exiles with the true self in the car. And it kind of tells a little bit about each part and what's happening. And I'll post that picture in Discord. It's came across it by a different author who I haven't found any books that he's written about internal family systems, but his pictorial of it was really good. So I'll post that.
One of the things that I've been thinking about as an analogy to how fourth density groups and fifth density, even the Confederation with the fourth, fifth, and sixth being members, the layered members there, how they try to help third density. And I've been thinking of it in terms of a greenhouse. So let's say you build a really nice greenhouse and you plant some plants there. Well, a greenhouse can't just be built and the plants just can't be set and everything is fine. A master gardener, would have to have the ability to take the temperature of the room and which plants need to go where in order to be okay with the certain temperatures. And if it's too hot, a master gardener opens up the vents and certain amount of vents to let it go, and the heat in the wintertime to close the vents. A master gardener would have to know how to create an environment that gives the plants the best opportunity to grow according to their nature. And so for me, what Rod talks about as the guardians, capital G guardians, that create and manage this super complicated algorithm that opens and closes the quarantine according to the karmic needs and the calling of planet Earth. It's exquisitely precise and extraordinarily complicated, of course, but it's not unlike, I think, opening up, knowing how much to open up the windows and shut the windows and these kinds of things. And then lastly, I would say, in terms of the battles between the fourth density negative and positive, I've been thinking about it this way. What if in the greenhouse that we're talking about, and let's say it's in Texas, and it's 105 degrees outside. So in the greenhouse, it's really hot, and maybe you can open up all the windows, but it's still really hot. And if you're not careful, the actual heat is going to overcome the plants and they're going to wither. So let me say it this way, that the heat, metaphysical heat that we have created on Earth is our own inefficient use of catalysts, particularly what to do with bellicosity. and it intensifies. That catalyst just intensifies until we get it. But we have created a certain situation on Earth where the heat is just continues to grow. We don't learn. And now it's so hot. It's so hot in this metaphysical greenhouse that even if you're a little plant and you get watered and you want to grow, it's too damn hot. And so the powers that be, the guardians, would bring in air conditioners, air conditioners to come in. And so you bring in an air conditioner, and we're going to call that fourth density positive. But the air conditioner might do its air conditioning, and then a heater comes in. And so then the heat, this is the fourth density negative. So they're like battling it out, but their battle creates the capacity for a perfect room temperature inside of the greenhouse. And the very air they're using, of course, is the greenhouse itself, to blow through the AC, to blow through the heater. So Rod talks about this, that they're using our exhaust, our bellicosity exhaust, and it would be too hot here. We would just shrivel in anxiety, all of us. We couldn't grow. So this battling is taking place to actually use up that excess air, and then it would be too cold if only the AC was on. Of course, the heat with the heater, it would contribute to the heat, but if you put it together, it just creates this atmosphere again so that we can grow as plants. That's the way I've been seeing it. What do you guys think about that?
I think that was very well said.
Thank you.
Depends what personality style you are. I can look at all that philosophically and feel okay about it, but I pity the poor empaths of the world who feel all of that energy, both the hot and the cold, and all the swirling currents and gases, and it all feels very troubling and disturbing to them. I don't know what to say about it other than that it says easy but does hard for some people.
Yeah, I think that's true. And eventually the empaths have to learn to just dress in layers. If it's too cold, you got layers, or just take that off, baby. It's getting hot in here, so hot.
I saw the air conditioners as I could put a person's name to it that was sort of prominent in being an air conditioner. And then I could find a person that could have be the heater, and maybe it was at the same time in their lifetimes, and you could see that. So that's how I saw it.
Well, the Supreme Court unplugged one of our heaters by keeping the determination that Donald Trump was a sexual abuser in place, and not deciding to review that case.
I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Was that today?
I think I heard it today, actually. Yeah, on YouTube. All I got was the YouTube. It was a legal discussant discussing that. I assume he was right.
That's part of the disclosure too, is just to what degree that there has been fighting in the left, and really immaturity in the left, and then immaturity in the right. And I think we have to learn how to dialogue, but the worldviews are often very, very different. Very different.
Mm-hmm. Rudy, you keep up on the news somewhat. Did you hear anything about that?
I don't think she can talk, but she said 8 rulings came down today.
Oh, does she say that? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
In the chat. I think her jaw hurts probably too much for her to chop.
Got it. Good call.
I actually watched the news a little while today, and I never do. I think one thing that was upheld was if you're born in the United States, you will maintain your citizenship, even to non-citizen parents. I think they also said transgender women would not be able to play in women's sports, or ruled that I don't know that they're going to set up. That was kind of the ruling, but I don't know how that's enforced or whatever. But those were just the 2 things I heard today. That'd be maybe 2 of the 8, maybe Rudy's talking about. I don't know. Along with Trump releasing some financial documents that he made $1 billion in cryptocurrency in 2025. Playing the crypto market.
No one's surprised about his corruption anymore. That's the great thing about him, is that he can be so corrupt that you're not surprised anymore.
Yeah. Well, also, I think the trading forum that he was using, he's also helped either create, or he and one of his children are on the board. But that's always been the case with both parties when it gets into those levels of money and all that.
Yeah, one of them was to uphold the birthright citizenship, and then there was transgender athletes, allowing states to legally ban transgender athletes from participating on girls' sports teams. And then something about the court struck down Watergate era cap, allowing political parties to spend unlimited money in coordination with their candidates, whatever that means. That was 3 of them.
Michael?
I just want to follow up on, I finally found the therapist that works in IFS who, he's written the book, The Others Within Us, IFS, Porous Mind and Spirit Possession. He's worth looking into. His name is Robert Falconer, and he's done several interviews on YouTube, and he does take it a step further to imply, and in his work also, that there are external entities that attach themselves. Anyway, I'm going to close that loop.
I have if I can share my screen, Doug.
You should be able to.
Okay. Okay, so one of the other findings in IFS is that behind all of the troubled parts of the soul, the exiles and the all the emergency people like the firefighters and the managers who are less emergent but still keep the exiles hidden. But what he finds that when you clear away with this, these are the kind of traits that the anchored self, Doug, and that's the reason I'm showing this, is that this is sort of like Doug's anchored self. And these are the 8 C's, which I thought were clever. But the anchored self has these traits sort of naturally: curiosity, calm, confidence, compassion, creativity, clarity, courage, and connectedness. They easily connect with other people and so forth. And he lists some other traits as well that don't have C's: joy, sense of humor, equanimity, forgiveness, perspective, playfulness. So that might be Richard Rohr's true self, or that might be Doug's anchored self, or that might be the essence of who God created us to be, or Christ's self. I don't know what you'd want to call that, but that's what he finds when he clears away the debris.
Mm. Mm. I think that's great. That's, IFS as well as ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. Those two alone they've come on the scene on the shoulders of the progenitors, CBT and other things, psychodynamic theory. They couldn't have arisen until now, but they really are the perennial truth now given to us in conventional language, that we can actually use. So this is the purview of a lot of spiritual traditions, but now giving us language that we can use. And I mean, this is fifth density type of wisdom. This is pyramid in the queen's chamber type of learning. And it's the fruit of the portable pyramid adepts that are channeling these kinds of things and bringing them up and out. I'll give you an example about ACT. I use this a lot. Acceptance and commitment therapy. And the whole premise is based upon that you don't try to replace a negative thought with a positive thought. For a lot of people can't do that, you don't try to think about, well, is that belief system that I have actually logical? And maybe if it is, I can just let it go. A lot of people can't do that, which is sort of more CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. But ACT instead, what it does is it says, erasing or omitting or getting rid of is not the point. The point is, first off, being human is hard. So there is no such thing as perfect equanimity. Just kind of get over it. You're going to have anxiety or depression. And it's really not to get rid of those things is not the point. The point is to decrease the intensity and the duration of said maladies. And actually not even to see them as maladies, but rather change the terms from negative and positive to comfortable and uncomfortable. And so, for example, whenever I myself have maybe a moment of shame or some kind of grief ambush or something like that, instead of saying, why, I don't want this, I just accept it as one emotion amongst many. And I make room for it inside of my heart. But then, so the way I actually imagine it is I am a host. I am not a host. What are they called? The maitre d' of a banquet, and the guests are my emotions. And so if I have a really negative thought, I will picture that thought in some kind of way. Maybe it's a person or a symbol or something, but I invite the thought inside. So I accept you shame. I accept you anger. I accept you anxiety, something like that. I bring that, and then in my mind's eye, I serve it food. So I'm nurturing it, but then I pivot my gaze, and there's 100 other guests here that I must now attend to. Joy and happiness and being present and all of these other things that are also here. So then I just leave anger, to eat, and then I go over on the other parts and I spend time being present to them. So that's one technique, but it really works. So the idea is to decrease the intensity from, let's say, a 9 to 2, and decrease the duration of the feeling from 3 days to 3 minutes. And it really works. But that's spiritual. That's just perennial spiritual, good Buddhism, good Christian detachment. Hospitality, all the things you can think about.
Reminds me of Rumi's guest house a little bit.
Say more.
Just the when you say that, Rumi, I consider as a poem welcoming everything that comes to me today. It could be a joy or a meanness. Yeah.
Is there any, before we end here, is there any question or thought about the raw material that has intrigued you, or of late? Doesn't have to be, but anything, or that we've talked about that might be in the raw material that you might be curious about, Danny?
Well, DeMarcus, when he mentioned Moses and Mount Sinai, I wasn't familiar with some of those things, and I'd come across a book a while back that was taking Egyptian history and comparing it to biblical history, and it was saying that the time of Joseph being there and such was off by about 300 years, and it was actually making the case that Moses was actually a pharaoh, just like Joseph. Well, Joseph acted, did everything, but he wasn't the pharaoh. But that Moses actually was for a while, and it was interesting. I think I sent it to Tim after he'd done his presentation that night. But so I almost feel like Moses was probably pretty well schooled in Egyptian. Well, it even said that he was schooled by the priests of Ra and such. So that triggered some curiosity, DeMarcus, what you said. I don't know if there's time to even talk about that more, but
yeah, I would say, I mean, gosh, I could do a whole presentation, but quick answer, and him definitely being raised up in that environment. And Ross said he was a very positive, extremely positive person, and his mind was bent more towards unity. And so that opened him up to impression from higher entities. And so the Confederation, the Confederation Yahweh was the first, and pretty much, transmitted unity in its simplest form. Rob really doesn't go into details of what that was, but because Moses's people, the Israelites, wanted to see wonders and they wanted to see physical actions and physical proof of God, that unfortunately opened Moses up to impression from negative sources. And so that's where Orion steps in and kind of takes the turn. That's when Yahweh in the Old Testament takes a turn towards wrath and laws and do this, don't do that. And so it's kind of a journey between, like I said earlier, the Confederation and Orion forces over these people who are also descendants of the genetic interference that the Confederation Yahweh had made at the beginning of their density cycle. So it's pretty a long, complicated journey. But yeah, Moses being brought up in that environment definitely, I think, allowed him to be impressionable and to be open to contact from higher sources.
Thank you.
Well, very good. Next week, Tim will be back, and he has something fun planned for us for good dialogue. And then after that, we will do prayer intentions. So that's kind of the unfolding here. Would someone like to close us down?
I would do that.
Oh, thank you, Danny.
Before we close, I've got some information. If y'all,
oh sure,
we have 4 minutes, and this will only take 30 seconds. Yeah. Pull it here. It says Trump asked the Supreme Court to overturn a 2023 jury verdict in New York that found him liable for sexually abusing writer E. Jean Carroll in the 1990s and defaming her when he called her claims a hoax. On June 29, 2026, the justices denied his appeal without explanation, which is standard when the court simply refuses to take a case. So that's what happened. That's what I was referring to.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Danny.
Impotent Creator, I'm so thankful for for our group. Living alone so much of the time, I'm so thankful to have people I can join with, that we can share with, that I think we even can bring the law of squares into our lives with. I'm thankful that often the next day after we've met, I feel different, and things look different. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for what each one here in the group brings, their own unique manifestation of our divinity, and offer my hope for us to continue to just manifest this more and more in our group lives and in our individual daily lives. Amen.
May it be. God bless, guys.
Good to be with everybody.
Good to be with everybody. We'll see you next week.